Good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to today's edition of Minutes with Brett Live. And have you ever wondered about how to future-proof yourself in your career or your life? Well, my guest tonight has done that more than once, and she's had an incredibly successful career in life, and she's going to tell us how she did it tonight. And we're going to have a conversation about this. And so I'd like to introduce Miss Jane Shaver, who is in North America, and she is currently vice president with Atlantic Union Bank here in North America. And she's had the opportunity and has created opportunities to work all over the country, basically on both coasts and kind of in between, and fly over country. And so Jane, welcome to the program. It's great to have you here. Thank you for agreeing to share some of your success secrets with us. It's wonderful to have you.
Thank you. It is a real pleasure to be here. I was excited to get the invitation. We've known each other for so long, and just glad to be part of this global conversation.
That's great. And why don't we just take just a brief minute or two for the sake of the audience, those that don't know you. Maybe you could just give a brief recap of your adult career track, and you can kind of start with maybe university or where you grew up, and kind of walk us through where you're at today, and then we'll kind of steer the conversation towards letting people know how to future-proof themselves.
Sure. Well, of course, education was paramount in our family. I grew up in a small Midwestern town in West Central Illinois, and I went to Western Illinois University, which was in that town. My father was a professor there, and my mother and my parents both went there. My whole family basically went there. But, we in that town, we just had such a great opportunity to attend the university. It was really a formative time in my life. And that was, I think, the beginning of, future proofing for me, as far as, making sure I got an education that I paid for myself. So.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. So you got your degree.
Got my degree and basically set off, moved out of my small town and started, working in what my major was at the time. But then eventually we ended up moving to St. Louis, and I started in my banking or my financial services career with Citicorp Mortgage back in like 1988, and have moved around several times with Citibank and Bank of America and, multiple other banks. I was doing a tally the other night, and I've actually worked for 5 banks in 5 different markets and 14 different branches. So
wow,
it's been a journey.
That's fantastic. Where are some of the places that you've lived, Jane?
Well, we started out in, of course, the Midwest, and we moved quickly to the San Francisco Bay Area. I was working on the conversions, moving mortgages back to the St. Louis Service Center. And the last conversion was the Oakland conversion. And we just took an opportunity to move out there with my husband at the time, with his company. And it worked out for both of us. And I started my banking career there, as you know, in the branches. After that, we moved to Indianapolis and Chicago. I worked for Citibank and Bank One in those areas. After Chicago, we moved to Arizona, and I was able to take some wonderful time off to raise my family, which was really excellent, great for both of us and for the kids. Moved to the East Coast. I'm in the Mid-Atlantic area of North America now, and managing yet another company's branches. So. Very exciting.
That's fantastic. Yeah. When you mentioned you took some time off to focus on family, how much time was that, Jane?
Well, I off-ramped my career for 10 and a half years. During that
Okay.
time, we moved several times as well. And we were kind of in that phase of moving about every 18 months or so. And we did 3 of those really quick moves, 18 months to 2 years. After we moved the last time, I said, we're staying here, staying here for a while. It was time. It was time for the kids, to be able to settle down. It was time for me to be able to think about going back to work. So it was time.
That must have been quite, let's talk, it's fascinating. That must have been something to, be so busy, so successful, moving around many different places. And then all of a sudden you're not working anymore and you're focused on family. What did that feel like in the early days? Was it, how did you feel?
When I left Chicago, that was really another really excellent experience. I had learned a different type of branch management, working with, I managed the entire building, and I really felt like I had spread my wings a lot more than I had in the past. And I was fully licensed, and I had, stock options and things like that. But family was our priority. And we talked about it quite a bit. We made the decision together, and we moved to a place where we could be comfortable and afford to live in a beautiful home, and not have to worry about constantly having the double income. One of the things that I did, though, before that, I basically started, because we were in an area that we could kind of do this. I started setting, some of my income aside, so that my personal, salary, I was setting some money aside so that I could take some time off to raise the kids. So
that's great. So 10 years passes, your kids growing up during that process, and then you decide to go back to work. So was that an eye opener for you, or no big deal because you'd done it before? What was it like from the point you made the decision to go back into resume your career, and what was it like in the first few months? Was it the same or different?
It was different in several ways. It was very different. Just the regulatory landscape had changed. Banks had become much more, I want to say, competitive. I mean, they had more of a focus on the sales cultures than they had in the past, like with training programs, and a lot of job families had changed. A lot of roles had changed in banking. But one of the things that was really nice for me, I always felt, no matter where we moved, I always felt like I had a home, because I knew banking and I understood the fundamentals, because I had really great coaches that taught me the fundamentals, and really invested in my future, supported me becoming, a very successful branch manager.
Okay, so your anchor when you got back in, even though the environment looked different, was the fundamentals. Is that what am I interpreting that the right way?
It was. I had kind of a self-confidence there. Just, I knew what I knew, and I knew it well. The things that I didn't know yet, or the things that had changed, I knew I could study up on, and I did that. It did take me a while, though, to really on-ramp my career. I did a lot of study. I looked at a lot of the changes that had happened. I completely revamped my resume, updated it. Resume writing had changed a lot from the time that I left in 1999 and the time that I on-ramped again. So in 2010. So, keywords, making sure everything was up to date with that. Resume scoring had happened. So that was intimidating to me. So I sought help, from some of the resume writing services and experts, and that was very helpful to me.
That's good. I think that's also a good point. And so what I've heard so far is going back to the fundamentals, what you're good at. It's foundation, and asking for help, seeking help when something maybe you're not ultra familiar with that you need advice on. What I found, Jane, is so many people are afraid to ask for help when they don't know something, and so I really admire you and respect you for actually doing that at that point in time, because it's I think you're amongst the minority that actually does seek help on things like this and not pretend to be an expert if you're not. Yeah.
Well, you know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. So I've got amazing mentors, friends. I have reached out to several people I worked with in the past, friends that are HR directors that could help me update my resume and give me the right formatting and things like that. Other people who are going through a similar situation. I was talking to 2 or 3 people that were also looking for jobs and what they were finding in the area, right? Because I was looking for a job in a certain area so that I could have a nice commute or a decent balance with my family time and everything, because things had changed since the last time I worked.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's fantastic. So fast forwarding on, and I see in your resume that you worked for ADP for a while.
Oh yeah.
Which is a little bit different than a bank, right? Tell us a bit about that, and how did you reshape or reinvent yourself to be able to kind of move to a very different industry, actually. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Okay, well, so banking had changed, and banks were merging. There were a lot of mergers, acquisitions. There was downsizing because they wanted to be competitive when it did come time to do a merger. And that was a bank that I was with, and they were downsizing. And even though my branch had been performing and actually grew 4 to 7% every single year that I was there, it just wasn't feasible to keep that branch open because of the costs. But what I realized is that there's a lot of peripheral skills that I had that were still fundamental to, it was monetary, it was payroll. It was really an exciting opportunity because there was a whole new market that we were setting up. And I, went back to my time in California when we were opening branches, and the 3 branches that I helped open, and dug deep and looked at the skill set that I had helped, develop back then. The market that we were opening was here and then also in Florida. So kind of the East Coast market. And a lot of the research I did, some of the research I did was, how am I going to manage millennials? I was really looking at, it was a whole other group of people that I was going to be managing. It wasn't experienced people who had been with a bank for, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. It was a whole new market with a lot of new people just coming out of college, or maybe this was their second job. And so
how did you, sorry to interrupt. How did you tell us a little bit more specifically about how did you research how you're going to handle the millennials? I think this is a fascinating subject, and I know many people are going through this right now, because the millennials are really the future of the world at this point, and some of the generations even younger than them. So tell us more about that.
To have really good jobs.
That's right.
Retire someday.
Yes.
Well, so I'll be honest, I signed up for the premium LinkedIn, and I did a ton of LinkedIn learning. I did a lot of Googling, Psychology Today, and all kinds of articles. I consider myself a lifelong learner, and I've always looked for something to just get a little bit better. One of the things I really realized is that the millennials, in my research, they like experiences. And so it's even important for them to have that work-life balance. And they're not like I was necessarily, where it was get up, go to work, stay there all day, stay there late, and feel great about it or get rewarded for it. Their reward really is many times in the experience and making sure that they can do their work, and the work gets done and it gets done well, but also making sure that they have that balance in their lives, which isn't that dissimilar from what I want right now in my career as well. So
Mhm.
kind of related to it in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes right into the lifestyle that some people actually choose to have. But I think it's great how resourceful, I think that's the appropriate word, that you've been, with all of this. And would you consider yourself versatile, Jane?
Yes, you have to be. I think the thing about versatility, agility, making sure, a lot of these companies, a lot of systems that are coming on these days, they don't roll them out with 100%, like this is 100% exactly how this system is going to be from now until the end. They're agile systems. So you have to understand you're starting at about 60 to 70% of function of what that system can accomplish, and it's going to build over time. And how, after we get more experience with the system, how are we going to build that system out to really suit what we need, what the company needs, what the consumer needs. So yes,
Absolutely.
agility is huge. Personal agility, you have to be super flexible. You have to sometimes, you've got to get the job done. You have to know when to call in, for an assist. I had, even at ADP, I had people that had done the job before in different markets that I was able to rely on to help with the training. We did a great job getting our team up to speed about 4 or 5 months earlier than the normal teams came up to speed. So they were within 3 months, they were rolling, and they got it done. It was good.
That's fantastic. And Jane, how many people would you guesstimate, you may not expect this question coming, that you come in contact with every day? Number of people, 20, 30, 40?
I would
Less,
say,
more?
if I'm talking with my customers at the branch, I personally probably talk to at least 15. I know we do a lot more transactions than that at the branch, and I don't get an opportunity to talk to everybody, but the ones I talk to are just amazing, super receptive. We've got a really great team at my branch, and so those relationships are always being built.
How large is your team currently?
So we have 4. Actually,
Okay.
for the summer, we have 5. We have
Okay. So you're really hands-on.
Oh, yeah.
And you're close to where the action is. And I think that's fantastic because and there's many entrepreneurs watching this right now, and every single business owner and entrepreneur will be the first to tell anybody that money is made where the customer is. It's not made at the top of a big, 53-story building and different things. And I've always, created an environment for my teams where those closest to the client is where the money is. So I think that's great. And so you probably come into contact with your friends, probably 30 to 40 people a day, roughly, right? Total
Absolutely.
people.
And I want to go back to the point you just made about I've always followed, that's advice that you gave me. And so I've given that advice to other people as well. Like, you need to be in a revenue generating part of the company if you want to have longevity. I feel that. I really feel that those are, that they contribute to the bottom line. They're probably the last to go most of the time. So for me, that's been very much a comfort zone.
How do you establish trust with people? Because you're in contact with the public, and you may or may not have relationships, and it may or may not be different how you establish trust with somebody that you've just met versus somebody you've known for a long time. Do you have an approach that you use, or is it just in your DNA? How do you assess whether you can trust somebody or not? I get that question a lot.
So for people to trust me, I think it's extremely important to be authentic. I have to tell people my honest opinion. If I'm looking at something and and they tell me they have 2% on their mortgage at that moment, I'm not going to try to turn them into getting a 4% loan. I have to do the right thing for the customer. And I think that comes through. I've heard lots of feedback from my customers that they really appreciate it. Now, there's a time when I'm going to need to say, hey, your rates are lower. We need you to consider, refinancing, or we need you to consider doing something else with your money, or here's another way we can help you to do more with your money. But I think that is easier to do once you've established the trust and the credibility with people.
So that's how
going.
How do you determine if you can trust somebody?
I listen. I listen to what they have to say. I try to see where it's coming from. And again, I really appreciate authenticity in other people and myself. And that for me just is a huge factor, is somebody who's being authentic, because I can take feedback from people who mean it in the right way. And I can take feedback from people that don't mean it in the right way. I feel like you can learn something from every experience. Sometimes it's how not to do something, though. So
absolutely. Just let the telephone ring if it's ringing, and sometimes it's better not to pick it up, right? So
right.
I think that's great. Last question, Jane. And COVID unfortunately has changed so much of the world. The past what will be a couple of years soon, and it's taken so many lives and impacted so many lives, and it's also changed the business landscape so much. And what advice would you have to somebody that is looking to re-enter or reinvent themselves in the economy as it's changing? Because you've done this several times. You've explained to us how you've done it. What advice would you give them right now if they know that things aren't the way that it was before COVID? It's a bit different now. What should they do?
Well, it is going to be different, and we should expect it to be different. I think for me, change, you have to expect change, and and then you can anticipate it, and then you can plan for it, right? So once you just get that in your thought process, you can make plans, and then you can succeed at changing. You can make changes that help you succeed rather than just becoming a victim of change. You can be proactive about it. I think that proactivity is a huge part of it. For people who are looking for jobs, bravo. I think now is a great time to be looking for jobs, because companies absolutely are looking for great people. And that's key. People have skills. Companies are looking for people. Don't sit it out. Has anybody ever heard of an economy where they say it's better not to be employed? I haven't heard of that economy yet. So I think it's better to be employed, just because you've got to look at more than the here and now. You've got to look at your future.
I think that's great advice. And so everybody, there you have it. There's some great advice from somebody that has reinvented themselves in different parts of the country, different industries even, and go back to the fundamentals, be resourceful, do LinkedIn Premium, do your research on millennials, do what's necessary, but don't be afraid, right, Jane, to admit that things have changed, right? I think that was your last piece of whopping advice that I got out of that.
Absolutely. It's going to happen. It always does.
It's going to happen. It always does. And so, well, we're out of time now, but I think we could go on for a long time. But Jane, thank you so much for sharing your experience with the viewers, and also especially how you were able to future-proof yourself for the changing landscape as you completed the journey of your life, and you still got a large runway ahead of you, I'm sure, and you'll continue to reinvent and relearn and all of that. And even I've learned quite a bit from you during this conversation. So thank you very much, Jane.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That's great. Good. So everybody, thank you for tuning in. Next week, the camera is going to shift to one of my favorite places in the world, the Far East. And I'm going to introduce you to a spectacular woman who's going to tell us, I'll say that for next week. I won't spill the beans now, but stay tuned. And I'll talk to you next week with a very special guest from Asia. Thanks very much and have a great evening. Thank you, Jane.